Can I ask you a question? How do you perform high performance teams? Do you have tips and tricks, and how do you hire them?
Well, first, the first one is very obvious. People in the team should be a team player.
Yep.
But it's so obvious that we tend to forget it. So you need to be focused on the team's results instead of your own results. That's the first one. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to hang out with the team all the time. It doesn't necessarily that you have to be this social person that always is on the dance floor the first, that is the latest to lead the bar. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just doesn't mean that you have your priorities straight. Team first, me second. That's simply it. Simon Sinek, I believe, has a short presentation on YouTube. And he says, if you want to build a winning team, you should get rid of the assholes. And he has a good example that if you make a diagram about top performance and assholes, you can see that there is too often an overlap with the assholes being top performers as well. Now, and he has a great example of the US Navy SEALs that they unanimously, that's a difficult word, say that we want to get rid of the top performing asshole and we will exchange him for a less performing team player. And why do they do that? In their team, the lives are truly 100%, not metaphorically, but truly dependent on one another. So each team member protects the lives of the other team members. He said, we cannot have an asshole there. It's a liability. He will get us killed because he's an asshole. Yes, he's also a top performer. He's the best shooter. He's the best diver. He's the best fighter, but he's an asshole. And that will cost lives. So get rid of the assholes is number 2. And number 3, and that's what I showed in my presentation, it's about culture. And what is culture? Culture are the beliefs and the values of, that form that are fundamental to your behavior and to your actions. So everything you do is based on your beliefs and on that which you hold dear, that which is ultimately important to you. And you should act by that. So make sure that in your team there is a culture which is visible, but you don't need to write it down. Often culture is not written down. It's often it's tribal knowledge, so it's in the heads and in the hearts. An example from this is the F1 from Formula 1 team from Mercedes. Now, whether you're a fan or not, it doesn't really matter, but they have one clear cultural example which they keep repeating as a mantra and which is also fundamental to their success. In their team, they never blame a team member, they always blame the problem. So it's never, well, Stefan, he forgot to tighten the exhaust, so and that's why we lost the race. No, the case is always, how can we make sure that the exhaust is always tightened before the race? So they blame the problem and never the team member. And that should be one of the most important cultural aspects in your team. And I demand that from my team members.
What is your crucial question to determine if candidates are meeting those criteria for your high performance teams?
I explain them what the situation is and what the goal is that we're trying to achieve. And then I ask them, what would you do in my place?
Okay.
And what I want them to answer, firstly, that is hire me. That's what the candidate should say. Yeah, so you need to have belief in the things that you can do.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. That is, shy is a negative emotion. Just be honest and upfront about what you can bring. That's the first thing. But also from the belief that a good leader assembles a team around him which is better than the leader itself. That's what makes it a good leader.
Okay.
So that's why all these big decisions, I always put them forwards to the team. And we don't start voting on them or whatever, but I just put them there and I want their input on it because they are in a lot of respects and I want them to be in most respects better than I am at it.
Right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have a question for Sjoerd? Very clear presentation.
No.
All right. Thank you again, Sjoerd, for.
My pleasure.
Now that you've heard that, let's move on and let's start picking what we want to do.
All right. Another question. What is your experience with creating high performance teams?
I knew that question was coming.
You could have.
Yeah, so I've always worked for smaller startups, and now that I'm doing this on my own dime, let's say, it's the first time I'm not running into budget issues, so it's interesting. The very first thing that I always want to say is indeed find the expertise that you don't have. You want to hire team members that are better at what they do than you are. Mm-hmm. For me, that's very easy. I'm not very good at many things, so that's helpful. But you know, get the right people for the right place and make sure that they know what they're doing. That's my primary choice. And the second might be down to my style, but I like to relay a lot of trust and freedom to the people who work in my teams. So I do a lot of really high macro level management. And I just rely on them to get it done. And if they have an issue, they can always come to me and talk about what needs to change or what they need my help with. But again, I hired them because they're good at something, so I rely on them to know what to do. And in the end, what I would like to see in a team is that they come up to their manager and have a problem, propose maybe 1-2 solutions, and you could just bounce the question back at them, like, what do you want to do, and go with that. And maybe it fails, and then they'll learn something from it. If anything, from security, I've learned that things will fail all the time. So just let people experience it.
So you think transparency and trust is very important for a high performance team?
Yeah.
To be open about mistakes, but also celebrating successes and knowing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Very good. Are there any other suggestions for high performance teams and how to build them and grow them?
Well, I can, if I may, excuse me, I thought the question was for everybody or not?
Yes, of course.
But I can add to what John just said about trust. So in your team members, as a leader, you give them trust, but you don't give them trust unconditionally. You put a condition on it, and you can receive trust from me, but then I want you to give something back to me, which is responsibility. So that's a condition for which you can receive my trust. So I trust you to do the right thing and to solve the little problems that come on your path from day to day, but you cannot come back to me at the end of a period or whatever, at the end of the project, when things have gone wrong, and then you start telling me why you haven't done the things that I trusted you with.
Yeah.
You solve them. You make it right. I don't care how you do it. You've got my trust. You can do it, but you must do it. So you cannot have the cake and eat it too. You get my trust, but I want you to take the responsibility. So that's with me, that's very important.
Yeah, it's something I heard someone say a long time ago is you typically delegate responsibilities, not tasks. And that's indeed how the approach that I use. It's too obvious for me to forget about it, but indeed, you trust them to take up the responsibility and drive it.
Okay.
And of course, the thing which was just casually mentioned about celebrating successes is extremely important. You should hang them on the wall. You should have pictures, recordings, everything. You should have a ceiling full of dents from the champagne corks. That's what you should have as far as celebrating successes is concerned. That's at least my opinion.
Right. Stefan, do you have any?
Yeah, I have one question. Sorry, I was trying to type, but I'm a man, so I can't do two things at a time. To whom it may concern, how do you look, as we hear now, 70% of the people, the younger people, are looking at other organizations. They are moving from other organizations. One important element, what they see, is that they don't want to work full-time at an office. They want to work hybrid. How do you look at this in the effect of trust and responsibility?
Well, I can give you an answer from my perspective. We at KPN, we also work in a hybrid form. It's about 50-50, 60-40, depends on what you do, what you have to do with it. In part of the trust, it is simply this thing, we manage on outcomes. So we don't manage on effort. It doesn't matter if I take 100 hours to fulfill a task or that I take 10 hours to fulfill the task. My job is to have the task fulfilled. And so that's the first thing. As far as trust is concerned, there's also the security thing about it, of course. With hybrid working, your attack surface is multiplied many times because you're sitting in the hybrid situation where you are not inside the company's network, you're partly inside your own home network. And so you need to have measures in place there as well, because that's a thing that you can't dismiss just like that. Basically the first thing is, well, manage on outcomes and not on effort. And the security part of the trust is make sure that you understand the risks involved. And if they exceed your risk appetite, as is mentioned, you need to put security controls in place, whatever those may be.
Good.
Also, we just worked 2 years remotely or hybrid. So I think as teams, we've kind of learned to deal with it. I've been lucky enough to work in a lot of companies that did most of the things outside of the office network, which is helpful for me. But I can see where more classic organizations like energy companies or many actually are still a bit shook by this type of work, and indeed not managing on time at desk, but time on outcomes or just on outcomes. It's something that people have to mature into, and as time goes by, managers will learn eventually, I hope.
Yeah, another thing there is Stefan, is in the year 2000, so that's already 22 years ago, I worked with Microsoft in the United States for a while. And I was located in the state of Washington, in Redmond, indeed, where the headquarters are. And I participated in a number of teams from Microsoft, which were comprised of Microsoft employees from all over the United States. And we were de facto working hybrid then, because it was impossible to have people together physically in one room. So we did video calling, we did phone calling, we did file sharing as much as possible. So we did already do, that was 22 years ago, a lot of the things that we are now, because of COVID, have been doing in the Netherlands. But basically, we were 20 years lacking behind on what was already an established way of working in the US, as far as Microsoft and indeed the other big companies, tech companies, were concerned there. So it is nothing new, but it is something different. And that's why I say there are some measures that you need to take. Maybe your managerial style needs to change. Maybe you need to take a good look at your security controls. But it is in that sense, it's not something new. It has been done, successfully done for many years, for instance, in the examples that I gave.
Good. Thanks.
Right.
Any further questions in the audience? No? Okay. Then I want to thank Sjoerd first. Thank you for your presentation and your insights. Jeff, same to you. Thank you. John, thanks. This is all recorded, so we will share it afterwards. We all share it in parts. It's your own, so I will share it first with you. So we try to put a blog on it, specifically on those topics and your insights. So I want to thank you, Ruud. Do you have anything, last words to say?
Well, perhaps our next event, Smart Buildings on the Tuesday, the 3rd of May, same time,